Our late film at 11 o'clock tonight on BBC1 stars Rod Steiger as the illustrated man whose completely tattooed body tells a terrifying tale of the supernatural. It's based on the story by science fiction writer Ray Bradbury.
Quiet please, quiet please.
Wimbledon 88, the world's greatest tennis tournament, only on BBC television.
The King George V Gold Cup is the glittering prize at stake when we visit the Royal International Horse Show in 15 minutes on BBC One, and that's after the news and sport with Moira, Stuart and David Icke.
A gunman tries to kill the Turkish Prime Minister. Turgut Özal survives with just a scratch. 20 people are injured. Prince Edward pays a flying visit to Northern Ireland and meets friends of the soldiers killed at Lisbon last Wednesday. And the goal which pushed the Republic of Ireland out of the European Championship. Good evening. Turkish police are questioning 50 people after an assassination attempt on the country's Prime Minister Turgut Özal. Those detained are believed to be associated with the gunman who fired at Mr. Özal during a political rally in the capital, Ankara. Mr. Özal escaped with a grazed hand, and the gunman, who was overpowered by security guards, is being questioned by police. Adrian Foreman reports from Ankara.
Mr. Özal was giving his opening speech to his party congress in front of about 5,000 people. Suddenly, from behind a line of photographers, a lone gunman fired 2 shots. Mr. Özal dived for cover behind the podium, but the shooting continued, and security men also opened fire. The suspected gunman, who's seen here ringed, tried to get to the side of the hall where a second gun was later reported to have been found hidden. Police said he had used a British-made automatic pistol with 8 bullets, and he was taken away by the police with a bullet wound in his arm. Questioning the man in hospital, police identified their suspect as Kartal Demirağ, a 32-year-old escaped murderer and known right-wing extremist. The attack injured 20 people, 3 of them seriously. They were treated for bullet wounds, cuts from flying glass and shock. Undeterred by the drama, but apparently wounded himself, Mr. Özal meanwhile resumed his conference address with the words, "Our lives belong to Allah, only He can take them away."
Prince Edward has been visiting Northern Ireland, where he expressed sympathy to friends of the 6 soldiers killed by an IRA bomb in Lisbon on Wednesday. The people in the town held a brief memorial service earlier today. They called it a simple act of remembrance.
We share their grief.
The people of Lisbon gathered in their hundreds today around the town's war memorial to pay their respects to the 6 soldiers who died in the IRA bombing last Wednesday. Flowers and tributes reflecting the town's horror at what happened are spread all round the memorial. Lisbon's mayor laid a special wreath in memory of the soldiers. It was a brief ceremony, but a moving one for the local people who are still shocked by the brutal murders. This afternoon, Prince Edward, who flew into the province on a one-day visit, expressed his sympathy with the victims. The Prince was at Hillsborough Castle to see work done by people on the Duke of Edinburgh award scheme. A special meeting, though, was arranged with representatives from Lisbon, including the mayor and friends and family of those who were killed or injured. Throughout the day, shoppers in Lisbon have been taking the time to lay flowers at the scene of the bombing, each person with their own special tribute. There are at least 400 bouquets at the moment, and more are arriving all the time.
The MP's mission to Tehran, setting off tomorrow, is to create better Anglo-Iranian relations and not to negotiate freedom for British hostages in Lebanon. A statement tonight from the Archbishop of Canterbury's office made that very clear, as had members of the British delegation earlier in the day. But the release of Terry Waite, John McCarthy and Brian Keane is the long-term objective, as the Archbishop's spokesman said last night. And relatives and friends of all three hostages have welcomed this new initiative. David Shookman reports.
This is the man who's masterminded the visit, John Little, now in Tehran, assigned by the Archbishop of Canterbury to help free Terry Waite. After so long with no word of him, and with the friends and families of all three British hostages still waiting, the Church of England now hopes a better atmosphere between London and Tehran may help. It's certainly the view of those leaving for Iran tomorrow, however modest their intentions.
I just felt that if I can, as a member of this delegation, make a small contribution to improving relationships so that other things can subsequently
We certainly cannot give the impression that a fact-finding mission of this kind by members of Parliament can achieve more than might be the case if it were, for example, Foreign Office ministers fully briefed on those issues.
Terry Waite's family certainly know not to raise their hopes.
I think it's important not to get it out of perspective. I mean, we're cautious about saying that it might work any miracles. I think it clearly won't. But we are pleased that the silence which has gone on for so long between our government and the Iranians is ended and the talk has begun.
When in Tehran, the delegation won't only raise the hostages issue, they'll also try to raise the question of Roger Cooper, the British businessman held in jail on spying charges. But much depends on who they're allowed to see. They believe they were invited by Mr. Rafsanjani, the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament. But an Iranian official denied that today, saying Iran had merely agreed to their request for a visit. This may be because Mr. Rafsanjani, while seeking generally better relations with the West, doesn't want to appear too eager. With Ayatollah Khomeini rumoured to be dying, though today reportedly receiving visitors, the struggle for the succession will intensify, a struggle that one Conservative MP warned could embroil the visiting delegation. The Foreign Secretary, as he flew off to Toronto for the Economic Summit, wouldn't comment. The Foreign Office isn't sponsoring this visit, but will no doubt be keen to see its results. The Foreign Office recognises that this visit could further the current gentle warming in relations with Iran, a process that began last week with the compensation deal for damage to each other's embassies. But relations will have to improve dramatically before there's any realistic hope for the hostages.
Mrs. Thatcher has arrived in Toronto for tomorrow's economic summit. The leaders of the West's 7 major economic powers will be talking about the problems of inflation in Britain and the United States. But their discussions will also cover terrorism, third world debts, and how to control the spread of AIDS. Reporting from Toronto, Martin Bell.
In length of service, Mrs. Thatcher is the senior leader here, and she's expected to play a dominant role in a meeting intended to emphasize the unity of the industrialized democracies.
Well, here we go.
The summit chairman, Canadian Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, who's facing an imminent election, is already here, of course, and settled in. The Italians are also in place. They arrived this morning. So are the Germans. Chancellor Helmut Kohl of West Germany was in a Canadian town with strong German traditions. It used to be called Berlin. It's now called Kitchener. Mr. Reagan is not yet here, but his is for this is his last economic summit, just as the previous one held in Canada 7 years ago was his first. Then a determined attempt was made to make the proceedings less formal. But these summits have become institutionalized. This time, $2 million have been spent just on turning a car park into a Canadian garden. The summits have their own momentum and, according to Mr. Mulroney, a usefulness too.
It's sort of like Prime Minister Churchill's comment about democracy. These summits have their problems, but of all the other institutions contemplated, what would you do without it?
Without it, there wouldn't be this showcase for Canada, including even a Canadian beaver, which spends its days in the conference centre and its nights in the same hotel as Mrs. Thatcher. Tomorrow, the diplomacy takes over.
In West Germany, 60 England football fans are still being held by police in Frankfurt. 43 were arrested during overnight disturbances, and 17 others were held shortly before England's European Championship match against the Soviet Union. But so far, there are no reports of trouble in the city tonight. Now, with news of how the footballers of both England and the Republic of Ireland got on, and the rest of today's sport, here's David Icke.
The Republic of Ireland's fine run in the European Championship came to an end this afternoon when they failed to reach the semi-finals. They were beaten 1-0 by Holland in Gelsenkirchen. In today's other Group 2 match, the Soviet Union beat England 3-1. But first, Michael Peschardt reports on the day Icke deserted them.
The Dutch were on top for most of the game, but once again players like Bonner in the Irish goal let no one down. And it was the Irish who went closest to scoring. McGrath's header just wouldn't go over the line. In the second half, the Dutch continued to attack, but the sheer force of will in the Irish defence was just enough to keep the scores level. And Ireland was still dangerous on the counter-attack. Houghton so nearly scored the all-important goal. The huge number of enthusiastic and well-behaved Irish supporters were just beginning to believe a semi-final place was theirs when, with less than 10 minutes to go, Keith scored. Ireland were out of a tournament which they and their supporters had done so much to enhance.
They'll behave themselves, they'll have a sing-song tonight, they've enjoyed the trip, they've enjoyed the tour, we've given them something to shout about, and for that, I'm grateful.
The game had been played in the best spirit. Ireland came to these championships as rank outsiders, but leave having earned a great deal of respect.
2,500 English fans had already gone home. They were avoiding a pointless match and another miserable performance. As a team, and to a man, England were outplayed. Hoddle in the 3rd minute gave the ball away. Alienikov scored with a swagger. The Soviet Union might have been 4 up inside 15 minutes. That they weren't was due to poor finishing and English good luck. But moments later, Hoddle made up for his earlier mistake. His free kick, met by Adams, England unexpectedly level. And then, in England's best period, Barnes' one positive contribution provided Stephen with a chance to redeem his poor championships. Frustration for the player and for the manager, but his team simply weren't good enough. That became clear as the Soviets took the lead 3 minutes later. The English defence in disarray for Mikhailichenko to score. Indifference from some fans to the result. Certainly England had little further to offer in the second half and succumbed totally 17 minutes from the end with an Adams own goal. But for the players at least, their disastrous week was almost over. The majority of the fans have behaved themselves, but the effect of the hooligan minority has been to damage England's international standing even further. Now the participation of the national team in the next World Cup is even in doubt. It's difficult to remember a period in which English football has been so consistently humiliated.
Today's results mean that the Soviet Union will play Italy, while Holland will meet the hosts West Germany in next week's semi-finals. The West Indies captain Viv Richards, who scored 72, and Gordon Greenidge with a brilliant century, have given England's bowlers a hammering in the Lord's Test. On Monday, play will resume with the West Indies 398 runs ahead with 5 wickets and 2 days in hand in which to bowl out England again. Graham Dilley, who took 5 wickets in the first innings, made the early breakthrough again. Downton the catcher and Haynes gone for 5. But no one was troubling Gordon Greenidge. He loves Lords, and it showed. He raced past 50 and scored his 6,000th Test run. When he was joined by Richards, they demoralised the England attack. Richards took 4 successive boundaries off Gladstone Small to reach his 50, as England suffered in the sunshine. Greenidge completed a splendid century, his 6th against England, with his 14th 4 of the innings. Greenidge and Richards both made their West Indies debuts in the mid-70s, and they've never lost to England since. It took a good delivery by Dilley to part them. Greenidge gave Embury the catch to end a partnership that threatened to overwhelm England. And there was more relief for the New England skipper when Richards departed for 72, playing on from Pringle. Dujon and Logie then batted through to the close. The West Indies scored 338 runs in the day, a tremendous scoring rate at Test match level. Martina Navratilova gave warning to the rivals she'll meet at Wimbledon next week by comprehensively winning the Pilkington Glass Championship at Eastbourne. She had a 6-2, 6-2 victory over Natalia Sreba, who knocked her out of the French Open. In the US Open Golf Championship, Nick Faldo has had a good start in the third round and was 5 under par at the turn, 3 behind the leader Curtis Strange. But Sandy Lyle fell back to level par before rain once again stopped play on the course.
And that's the news and sport. From David and me, good night.
The later part of this evening on BBC2 is devoted to those sports, with coverage of the US Open Golf Championship, highlights of the third day's play and the second test from Lord's, and international tennis with highlights of the ladies' final from Eastbourne. That's a late evening of sport beginning at 10:45 on BBC2.
Good evening to you. With not so much cloud around and lighter winds tomorrow, I think many of us can look forward to a somewhat warmer day. And I think this dry weather is going to be with us for some considerable time, because the area of high pressure isn't going to move. The area of low pressure down on the continent, they're not going to move either, and that gave some pretty vicious thunderstorms along the French Riviera today. You can see there's still some cloud lurking in the North Sea, but I don't think that's going to affect us quite as much as it has done recently. A little bit of cloud around, though, overnight, more particularly in northwest Scotland, where it'll give 1 or 2 spots of light rain and drizzle, and perhaps just a patch or 2 of mist and fog for a short while right at the very end of the night. Tomorrow, I think, by and large, will be a dry day. Most places having a good deal of sunshine. Again, though, that northwestern part of Scotland having a fair bit of cloud and 1 or 2 spots of rain. I think also there might be rather a lot of cloud around in some of those northwestern areas, that's southwest Scotland, Northern Ireland and North Wales. But even there, the cloud will break from time to time to give you a little bit of sunshine, and even in other areas, incidentally, it may cloud over every now and again. Now, it's on the chilly side, that sea. Here's a cold finger down over the North Sea, some cold fingers over the Irish Sea as well. So although most places will have quite a warm day tomorrow, with the temperature up about 22 or 23 degrees Celsius, anywhere where you get a breeze off the sea obviously will be a little bit cooler.
Heart of the Matter returns to BBC One tomorrow with a new series. This week, Joan Bakewell visits Andersonstown, where violence erupted at the burial of IRA members killed in Gibraltar.
How have the killings here in Milltown Cemetery, Belfast, and the murder of 2 British soldiers just down the road affected the people of the parish of St Agnes? Heart of the Matter talks to them, and to Father Tom Toner, who still resolutely preaches non-violence.
A new series of Heart of the Matter starts tomorrow at 10:05 on BBC One.
Now it's the excitement of the King George V Gold Cup, and David Vine introduces the contenders for this famous trophy at the Royal International Horse Show in Birmingham.